Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Gap Fireside Chat, where we talk about causes of and solutions to the talent gap. I'm your host, Pete Strauss, and joining me today is Pablo Rodriguez. He is a cybersecurity analyst at Fit Solutions. Welcome, Pablo.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Well, thanks for being here. Could you give our audience a little background on yourself and your career thus far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently a junior cybersecurity analyst with Fit Solutions. Just started that last month, so super excited about that. First job in the cybersecurity field. Before that, I was an IT specialist with a contracting company, InnoSource, but I was working within Goodyear, the tire manufacturer. So I did that as an IT specialist. And before that, I worked in a help desk with another MSP, NRTC. I did that for about 9 months. And I've had a whole bunch of odd jobs here and there throughout my career.
Very cool. So obviously you're pretty fresh into this now, being in security. I think our audience would be mostly interested in how the heck did you do it? Because there's so many people that are trying to break into the field right now. It seems like the field is saturated with people trying to break in and that for some reason can't succeed. So how did you do it?
Absolutely. It was a journey for sure. I decided to kind of do a career transition back in 2023. I remember it was the summer. It was around July. I saw a TikTok of this guy saying he got into cybersecurity in less than 6 months, and he was kind of going on a rant about that. And I thought that sounded cool. However, I was kind of super skeptical. So I started doing my research and kind of found the field interesting. So I enrolled in college. I went to WGU. Started studying for my bachelor's in cybersecurity. I saw the common pitfall for a lot of people is that they think they're going to get a cyber job right off the bat. I understood that experience is kind of a necessity. So I started targeting help desk jobs. So in September of 2023, I was able to land my first help desk job, gathered the experience I could from there, transitioned into an IT specialist job, which was kind of like your level 2 job. Gained a lot of valuable, extremely good experience there. And then once I graduated in July, I just hit the job market. It was just playing the numbers game, refining the resume. I did pair up with a lot of leaders in cybersecurity that would respond to me on LinkedIn and just ask for advice and, kind of how could I break in, and just played the numbers game. And eventually I landed a role. They saw my potential, and I'm now in the cybersecurity field.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess when it comes to the particulars of it, I'm curious how you managed to get an audience with some of these leaders in the security space. I think a lot of people are a little bit intimidated by that type of approach. If they're just now kind of starting their journey, how did you manage to catch the ear, I guess, of the hiring managers or the leaders in security?
The biggest thing is when I was younger, growing up in my career, everyone said, you have to build a network. And I never really took to that advice, but it's a reality. You have to develop your network. So one of the first things I did was built up my LinkedIn, just kind of got some followers from the cybersecurity field. And then I paid for LinkedIn Premium just so I can have access to sending messages. Any leader that I saw was hiring, I would message them, and I wouldn't message them in a way that it was like, hey, I want this job. It was more so like, hey, what is your advice? What are you looking for? What makes a great candidate? It was kind of knowing where their mind's at and who they picked. And naturally through there, they would give me a chance. So I had one interview directly related to reaching out to a leader. And I reached out not expecting anything. It was just advice. Hey, what was the market like when you were trying to get into cybersecurity? What's something you wish you knew before you got in? What are some skills that you must have to get into the field? So it was just reaching out, not expecting anything in return. And I think that approach differs from what usually people do, right? Where they're just like, hey, I'm very interested. Here's my resume. So I think that helped me. But it was just mostly seeking wisdom from the elders. I think knowledge is power, right? So it was just reaching out. Hey, what advice can you give me? What have you seen? Where's the wind sailing? It was kind of that approach, and that's what helped me.
Yeah, that's great. The idea of asking questions instead of pitching. It's so interesting too, because I've been, I guess, listening to a lot of podcasts and looking at influencers and sales gurus and stuff like that. It's actually a sales technique to just ask a bunch of questions, and you can kind of use that in a way to lead the prospect or whomever you're talking to down a certain path. But you make a good point, I think, about not having like an end goal in mind and just being, genuinely inquisitive and just gathering information. That can go such a long way. When it comes to your current role, though, like specifically, how did you land that? Was it a job that you had applied to online, or was it a referral? How did you actually get your foot in the door there?
No, this one was, I just applied. So I saw the job posted on Indeed, went through the application. This one was unique in where I couldn't find anyone to reach out to. So when I applied, I just, waited, and eventually I got a call from the hiring manager, or from the HR manager, and got an interview. And I think what helped me stood out there was kind of my certifications and the degree, to be honest. This was the job I landed was one where I couldn't find anyone to reach out to. So it was just playing the numbers. And the job market's rough right now. It's almost a full-time role in itself trying to find the job. One of my routines was every day try to apply to 3 to 4 jobs. I tried to look for things that I have relative experience in. So I looked at the job description, and if I can justify my current experience to fit into that, those are the jobs I was applying to. So this one was just, kind of a cold job application, and I got a call, luckily.
Any idea how many people had applied to that job when you had applied to it?
So on Indeed, it didn't show how many people applied, but in the hiring process, they had posted the job on LinkedIn, I think mistakenly, but they had posted a job on LinkedIn, and it got 450 applications in then 2 hours. So I remember seeing that, and I was like, wow, luckily this wasn't posted on LinkedIn from the get, because it would have been hard. I probably would have got drowned out by applicants.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they'll see that number and automatically they'll think, okay, well, I'm just wasting my time, which probably in a lot of cases is the truth. It sounds like you did a bunch of different things that set you up perfectly to just be that one person that stood out to them. And I would imagine that simple things like just making sure your resume is error-free and formatted well, and you have a presence on LinkedIn, you have a picture on LinkedIn, you've shared knowledge, you've reached out to people. A lot of that stuff can be gleaned just by looking at somebody's LinkedIn profile, how polished they are as a professional, if they're staying positive on LinkedIn, or they're super, super negative, which is a pitfall I see a lot of people fall into. So it's great that you were actually able to get some traction from a job application. You hear so many stories these days of people that applied to 1,000 open jobs and, didn't get a response to one, or only got a handful of responses. So like you said, I think it is a numbers game, but it's also a quality game. You need to make sure that you're not applying to things that you're not qualified for to start. And I think there's a lot of noise in the hiring market right now because people are just kind of shooting their shot and they're just applying to whatever. And, these internal recruiters, a lot of people don't realize they have 20, 30 open jobs on their desk at any given time to fill. And if you figure each one's got 500 or more applicants, that those aren't great odds for sure. So you must have done something really right to do that. Did you do any networking, like meetup groups or ISSA or ISACA, IC2, anything like that?
No, I didn't. I haven't had the chance to. There was one meetup here where I'm from, but I was currently working at the time, so I couldn't make it. I am part of a Discord group that has a whole bunch of cybersecurity professionals in it, so that's kind of like my meetup. We'll get together and kind of talk shop. But no, I didn't do any meetups. The biggest thing I wanted to differentiate was just posting on LinkedIn, right? Just little things here, like, hey, I'm doing this experiment. I'm doing Try Hack Me. Just kind of showing what I was doing. I think a big separator for anyone looking for a job is projects, right? A lot of us coming into the field have no experience when it comes to cyber. So I think projects will set you apart. On that same token, some projects, no matter how many projects you do, you can't simulate an enterprise environment. But I think it shows a willingness to learn, and it shows determination that, hey, I'm willing to do this at any, by any means. So projects, I think, helped push the boundary for me.
For sure. Did the hiring manager actually tell you what stood out to the hiring manager about you specifically?
So when I got to the stage with the hiring manager, so again, the certifications definitely stood out, and the projects. We went in depth about the projects. Hey, what have you done here? What are some tools you've been exposed to? So definitely sites like TryHackMe, my own projects I've done, YouTube has been a big help. So definitely the projects they helped me kind of gain my ground there, right? Because they asked me about specific tools if I had experience there, and not really, but I've used similar tools through projects. So that definitely helped me gain the edge.
That's a great point that you bring up there, where you didn't lie and say, well, no, I'm an expert in this particular thing, or I've used it a lot. You're honest and say, look, no, I haven't used that particular one, but here's something that I've done that's somewhat similar. I think for these types of roles that you ended up getting, a lot of what the hiring managers are looking for is just honesty, genuine interest in the field, highly self-motivated is a big one. So showing that you had all these projects. A lot of people think, okay, well, I haven't held a security job before, so what can I really put on my resume? But those projects are a great way to do that. If you're attending conferences, that's another good way to do it. Just get as many of those security terms on your resume, even if it's stuff that you've done in a hobbyist sense. Did you have a home lab by chance? Because that's another topic that people often bring up.
Yeah, so I have a home lab. I'm running a regular laptop, and I just run VMs on it. So I have a Kali Linux VM. I have some Windows 7, Windows XP kind of VM. So it's a little humble lab, right? It's nothing crazy, but yeah, I do run a lab. And it's fun. It's fun to just go in there, break stuff, fix it. I think one of the biggest qualities going into IT in general is resourcefulness, right? You got to know where to find the answers and be willing to find the answers. I think if you can show that with any job you're trying to get, is going to put you above a lot of applicants. Just showing you have the determination to find, hey, ChatGPT or Google, because a lot of IT is Google. A lot of this industry, even with cybersecurity, it's Google has a lot of good resources. The use of AI is pretty good. Just don't put no proprietary info in there or anything like that. But I think being resourceful is something everyone should adapt. And in terms of a home lab, yeah, it's super easy, to download a VirtualBox, get a ISO file, and kind of mess away with it. It's not that expensive. My laptop's 4 years old and it runs it just fine. So, yeah.
Yeah, resourcefulness, like you said, is huge, and researchability too. I remember hearing some meme or joke about how being an IT person is just being the best Googler. So I've heard that as well. But yeah, being able to look deeper than the surface. In the DFIR world, they call it investigative mindset. Not just taking the first answer that you come across, but actually digging a little bit deeper, moving laterally, thinking about other ways to approach a problem than the most apparent and obvious answer. So I think a lot, and I've talked to a lot of hiring managers on this show, a lot of what they're looking for these days is intangible. It's communication skills and, genuine interest in the field and researchability. And like you said, resourcefulness, those sorts of things. Do those things just kind of come naturally to you, or is it something that you've purposefully developed, do you think?
So early in my career, I did sales for a long time. So communication was at the forefront, right? If you weren't a good communicator, you were not going to be successful at sales. So my communication skills come from that. And then my researchability is just, when I was trying to make sales, I used to work for AT&T. So a new phone would come out and it was out on Friday and you had to sell that phone, So it was just searching up what it does, how it's different. So I kind of developed those skills there. And, as somebody who was green in the field, it was just okay, there's knowledge bases here, but where can I be self-sufficient and get answers? So that just came to the forefront. I was oh, well, Google's here, ChatGPT, an amazing resource that's recent. That's here, learning how to prompt that properly. And then communication has just been, from my sales days, it came naturally. And I think if I can give advice, the number one skill everyone should be working on is communication. Because I've seen a lot of stories where we have candidates that get to the interview process and then just completely bomb it. And a big reason for that is communication. They're not very good at, communicating, speaking their mind. And a lot of interviews, it's just about vibes, right? It's about how well you connect with the hiring manager, with the HR person. A lot of times they'll look at your skills and your resume is what gets you into the door. But to get the job done, it's communications, how they feel about you. So it's a very important skill that I feel is lacking in a lot of candidates and just in general nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. yeah, you could have somebody that's extremely technical that looks really good on paper, but they get to that interview and they're not able to tell a story about why they're a good fit for the company, or they haven't done the research to ask good questions of the hiring manager. So yeah, I mean, but these are things that can be refined. You know, if you feel like you're struggling with the communication skills, do Toastmasters, something like that. You know, there's YouTube videos on everything these days. There's one guy I really like on YouTube. I forget his name, but it's like basically how to be charming. You know, he has a whole series of stuff on how to be charming and interact with people to where they like you. I mean, there's just so many resources these days that there's very little excuse, I think, to not be good at a lot of things because, you know, and it's all free too. You know, never before in the world has there been access to so much information at our fingertips. You know, but I think that even more highlights the importance of really needing to stand out because everybody has access to all of these things. So essentially it's the great equalizer where if you really want to stand out, you got to be doing everything. You got to be checking every box. You can't be an average candidate to hope to break into the field right now. What about on the hiring side? Like, what would you recommend to hiring managers in hiring somebody at this level? What should they be looking for? And is there anything that you think they might be missing?
I think it's a good question because I feel that we have a lot of people now that are, you know, determined and really want to get the job. The only issue is that their background might not be aligned with what's on the job posting. So I can't tell you how many job postings I came across that were entry level asking for a CISSP, for example. You know, that's an experienced cert. Can't get that without 5 years experience. So things like that, I think, is just looking for talent where everyone else isn't looking, right? Cybersecurity is everyone's job. When I was doing help desk and IT specialist, I was doing cybersecurity. At Goodyear, I was in charge of vulnerability management. I was patching our servers. If there was cybersecurity risk, I was making sure I was remediating those. That wasn't directly implied on my job title, right? But I was doing cybersecurity. So it's just looking at places that are not the conventional places, right? Giving an opportunity to those entry level people because they're very determined and hungry to prove themselves and get into the field. And it's just, you know, fixing the job postings. Don't just copy paste job postings. You know, don't require a CISSP for an entry level job. I think that'd be it. I came across some very good job postings, like the one I applied to and landed. The job posting is very clear cut. It's like, hey, we're looking for somebody with, you know, little to no experience, at least a year working with computers. That's literally what they put, which I thought was fantastic. And then they just say, hey, if you have experience doing this or this, you know, you're welcome to apply. And those are the companies you want to work for, the ones that are self-aware, that are welcoming that fresh talent. So I came across two job postings like that and interviewed for both where it was very welcoming. It was like, hey, you know, yeah, experience is nice, but you don't need it. If you know how to operate a computer, come try your shot. So I think being more inviting to our, you know, us entry level candidates and trying to get into the field, just being more welcoming and, you know, refining your requirements. I shouldn't see a CISSP on an entry level job, and I hope that changes at least. You know, like a security plus is fine, but CISSP on a junior cybersecurity analyst role is just insane.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too. I think a lot of what happens is the hiring managers aren't reviewing these job descriptions because they would know that the CISSP is not an entry level cert, but HR might not. So they just copy from another job description. They got it wrong. And that's how you end up doing that without any review from the hiring manager, which could have caught that. So I feel like so many breakdowns in the hiring process these days are just bad process. You know, it's a people and process problem, not a technology problem. Everybody defaults to blaming the ATS or, you know, whatever AI algorithm is scanning for keywords. But in reality, most issues, I think, come down to people and process. Obviously, you came from an IT background, so you had kind of a leg up on the folks that maybe just got their degree and didn't have the IT background. Do you think it's necessary? I guess let me preface this by saying often I'll hear from hiring managers in security, CISOs or directors. They'll say, yeah, you know, security really isn't an entry-level field. It lays on top of IT, so you got to have a foundation in IT to be able to do security. Do you think it's necessary to have that IT background to be, say, a security analyst these days?
I lean both ways with this because coming from IT, I can tell you that the transition from IT to cybersecurity was pretty seamless because I did have that experience. On the same hand, I can see how my job can be learned by somebody who's just determined, right? I think if you have foundational skills, like if you know what the OSI model is, you know how to change an IP address on a computer, if you know basic skills that can be learned at home, I think you can be a security analyst personally. But at the same time, there is going to be a learning gap, right? And if you're coming from IT, I think the learning gap is significantly less than somebody who's not. But I feel that the job can be learned as long as there's some prior interest in it, right? So I don't think, a Starbucks barista fresh out of just, a history degree can come and do it. But I think if somebody has their security plus, their A plus, and, they work at Best Buy, I think they can go ahead and transition just fine, right? They got the concepts down. It's all about being exposed and actually doing it hands-on. So I'm in the middle. I would say yes. It can be done without experience, but you're going to have a way better time with experience.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I tend to agree. I think if you're smart enough and driven enough, most people, or most intelligent, driven people, can do almost anything. As long as they have the capacity to do that thing in the end with enough training and dedication and stuff like that. I think the real problem is that it's a supply and demand issue. If you have, I always put the number at like tens of thousands of people looking to break into the field right now. If that's the number, there's a lot of competition for maybe at any given time 100 open entry-level security jobs. And so you have to figure, of those thousands of people, there's probably going to be quite a few that have a background in IT, that have good communication skills. So we just have this proliferation of people and so much competition that, it's like, yeah, you could do it with an unrelated degree and enough drive and motivation. But if somebody else has those things and you don't, I mean, who's going to get hired at the end of the day for a limited number of jobs? So one thing I talk a lot about on this podcast, because I think it's important to think about this problem from the hiring side as well, is we don't have enough entry-level jobs. And I often hear pushback like, look, in my particular case as a hiring manager, I can't afford to train somebody. It's going to take a bunch of time and resources, and my team is already lean. How the heck can we open up more entry-level security jobs? Do you have any thoughts on that? Like how we can make that business case?
I think it's just trying to grow in-house talent. So internships are a good way, right, to kind of give training. I think, and from my experience, I think the lack of entry-level jobs is honestly manufactured, right? So when I was an IT specialist for Goodyear, that job required 2 years experience, and I got in with 9 months experience. And it wasn't, I picked up on it pretty quickly, about a week, 2 weeks in. So on paper, it wasn't an entry-level job, but realistically, an entry-level person could do it. I thrived in that job. So I think some jobs are categorized as like, hey, this is an entry-level, but in reality, the tasks are extremely simple. So I think it's just really reevaluating, like, how difficult is this job? Can somebody pick up and do this job? I think that'll open up a whole bunch of entry-level jobs when we take a look at the job roles, right? Another thing is just, internship opportunities are great. And I think it's just dedicating roles to junior analysts or just junior positions, growing talent in-house. I think maybe taking a position that might be overpaid and splitting it into 2 junior positions, right? I think you can make the business case like that. It's just opening smaller positions. But I think a big thing is just kind of auditing the job and seeing what the job entails. And you'll be surprised at the amount of jobs you find that on paper sound extremely complicated, but when going through the process, it's point and shoot, right? Sometimes they'll tell you to be an expert at Microsoft Excel, and all you're doing is inputting data to the table. So it's just taking a look at those jobs and really asking, hey, is this really not an entry-level job? Right? If it is an entry-level job that's overpaid, split that position in 2, right? Give it to 2 junior people. You got a 50% chance of somebody being a superstar and, progressing very fast. So I would say that's the business case, is auditing these jobs and finding out what's truly not an advanced job. Because there's a lot of jobs out there where you read the description and it sounds crazy. And then you get on the field and it's like, oh, what happened to the 50 tools you mentioned in your job posting? There's only 2. So I think that that's a way for businesses not only to kind of not have to invest more money, but just take a look at your jobs and see how hard are they truly, and are they entry level under the surface.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's an idea that came up in a few previous episodes where we were kind of talking about a skills inventory. If you can break down each job description into a list of tasks and skills needed to complete those tasks, basically you have 2 columns, and just split everything out to where you narrow it down to the most granular, like actual task oriented things that somebody needs to do. Okay, write a policy, that's a task. Monitor dashboard, that's a task. Okay, so what does the experience level need to look like for somebody to be able to do this specific task? And you could even rank them by, beginner, intermediate, advanced if you needed to better categorize things, or, just get very specific, like you said, and audit these job profiles. And like you said, I think if you do that and you're very intentional about it, you'll uncover so many tasks that don't need an expert level understanding of things. But if you're to combine all those tasks into a single job description, you got somebody doing vulnerability management and managing the SIM and managing the firewalls and also doing some GRC. You get somebody with all that experience and put it in the same job description, that's 150 salary all day long. Whereas if you're to split that up into 2 or 3 different roles with, basically some menial tasks, you could easily hire somebody more junior. So yeah, that's a great solution. Another one that I've heard over the years is if you have a relatively decently sized security team, you can have really good succession planning to where if you have a promotion path for each person, say that security engineer wants to become a lead, then you move that person up to a lead, and then you move the person that's the analyst up to his old role, that security engineer role, and then all of a sudden you have a junior analyst role underneath that analyst. So if you move everybody up in the organization, you can basically create an entry-level job. Obviously, that's not like a large-scale solution, I don't think, because it's like a one-off thing. But one issue I see often in thinking about hiring at the junior level is nobody's thinking about the long term. They're only thinking about they're reacting to an open position on their team. At this particular point in time, we need to hire somebody senior because we need these senior level skills. But it's always seems to be a reaction. Either somebody leaves or all of a sudden we get budget, we get headcount. Now it's time to hire, but there's often not a thought about, okay, how do we grow this team in a lot of different ways for the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years. So there's this short-term focus, I think, often where we're reacting to filling positions. I think it's a larger problem. The way companies operate and quarterly profits and stuff like that tends to engender that idea of short-term focus. But any thoughts on how we can build maybe larger scale training programs that are they're going to pay off for these companies in the long term, but also the shorter term, I guess, too, since that's what everybody kind of focuses on.
I think so. Kind of circling back to the progression, I think companies that do have a path of progression from junior to analysts and stuff, I think those companies are the ones that retain a lot of great talent. I know the reason I've left jobs is because there's no movement, right? There's no promotion opportunities, there's no way to grow. So definitely, I think that that's a great. If your company does that, that's great. In terms of training programs, I would say, circling back to kind of the skills, I think communication is just, as a whole in the industry, is lacking. I think one thing people need to be trained on is how to speak business, right? Because that's what the leadership's going to understand. They're going to understand money and business. So I think IT leaders need to get good at speaking business and helping leaders realize, hey, look, we can't run an IT department with 5 people for a place that employs 1,500 employees, and this is what it's going to cost you because of the lack of server upgrades or maintenance that we have to require. So I think that's going to be number one in helping. It's just, talking business, showing them, this is how much it costs. Because from my small time experience here in IT, the biggest thing I see is that overall IT is looked at as a cost center, right? We don't generate revenue. We don't bring anything in for the company. But that's far from the truth, right? When it comes to cyber, let's say we stop a ransomware attack. That's potentially $10 million we just save the company. That's the average it costs to get back on your feet. Not including saving the company on reputational costs, and things like that, fines. So I think leaders need to learn how to speak to that. Hey, listen, this is what we saved you this month. This is what we saved you last year. And I think making leaders aware of that is going to be kind of step one in that direction. Another thing I think is creating opportunities for cross training, right? Some salespeople might want to pivot, right? So giving them the opportunity to learn the ins and outs of cybersecurity or IT, I think that gives you an opportunity to kind of cultivate that talent without explicitly opening up a job position, right? So I think training programs like that, where you can cross train, maybe let a salesperson shadow an analyst for a day or something like that. I think that'll help out in cultivating that talent. That way, when there is a position that opens up, you don't have to be reactionary, like, oh my God, we need somebody. You know that you've trained other employees that are willing to step up and take that position. So I think companies ought to do that. Just allow cross-functional training. You'll be surprised at the amount of people that want to move careers, right? It can be the same thing. It can be an analyst that falls in love with sales. So, it goes both ways. So I think cross-promotional training, cross-functional training, I think is a great step in addressing that.
Yeah, and often you'll have people in these different departments that have different inherent skills and abilities and ways that they're wired. The salesperson is on average going to be more extroverted than the IT person. So when you have them kind of shadow each other, they kind of learn from each other by osmosis in both directions, not just the one direction. So yeah, that's a great point. And the better the relationships between departments, the more efficient things are as well. There's so much talk these days about how security leaders, including CISOs, really need to be able to speak business. But if they were to get some of this, shadowing and cross training earlier on in their career, I feel like it'd be a lot easier if they were working more closely with marketing when they were a director, or, the accounting department when they were a manager. They just kind of learn more about these different departments as time goes on. And again, through osmosis, at some point, they get to that point where it's just natural. They just speak in accounting terms to the accountants, but it's interesting. Nobody ever really talks about that for the more junior folks. It's all about the CISO being able to speak business. But could you imagine the differentiator it would be as a junior analyst to be able to speak business and make a business case to your hiring manager? Not just, hey, I really want to do the certification, but here's what the business is going to accrue in terms of benefits when I get this certification. It's not just a I want thing. It's going to help the company thing. So that's a great skill for anybody junior, I think, to pick up very early on and could really, really catapult their career. So I know you wanted to talk about this one, the idea of certs versus experience versus degrees. Where do you land on that debate? What do you think is the most important?
So I think, so when I came into it, I was like, okay, early in my career, I had dropped out initially out of college because I was like, I just want to make money and do sales. And as I grew later, I had my daughter, and I was like, all right, I want to kind of be a role model for her. And a lot of these cybersecurity jobs want you to have a bachelor's. So I was like, I have to do it. So I went back to school. My school curriculum came with a whole bunch of certs, so that was awesome. I thought that a degree in certs was enough. And as I've gotten into the field, I would go with experience. I think experience is the most important. It doesn't have to be direct experience, but it's just kind of knowing how to navigate your way around. For example, when you're analyzing logs, you got to understand how certain programs might react with a computer, right? What does an executable do? You got to understand private IP addresses versus public, right? What's malicious? So I'm in the experience field now. I would say experience is necessary. It doesn't have to be direct, but it has to be somewhat related, right? So if you have small computer experience, right? Just resetting computers or kind of doing some basic administration of computers, which I think everyone should have nowadays. I think you'll have a good foot forward. In that same case, I think certs are very important because it shows determination, right? Somebody with a whole bunch of certs shows that they're very interested in getting into the field and they have that foundational knowledge. So now all they have to do is gain the experience. So I think they work all together. I don't see why somebody can't have all three. There's a lot of educational programs out there that are offering certs into their coursework. So I think that's something to look at. But I think they all feed off each other. I would say somebody with certs, they have the foundational experience. Somebody with a degree, they went through the commitment of getting their degree and trying to put their best foot forward. And then experience. Seeing somebody, it doesn't have to be direct experience, but seeing projects, again, shows somebody's determination to get into the field and to just be willing to learn.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, there's so many things you pick up through experience, like troubleshooting ability, research ability, thinking more deeply about problem solving. And I think when hiring managers say they want certs, often it's a proxy for they're looking for that sense of self-motivation or passion. Those are just ways for the candidates to demonstrate that. It's not so much the piece of paper that they want. It's more, I just want to see some evidence that you're actually committed to this career path, which, there's other ways to show that. It could be volunteering at B-sides constantly. It could be that home lab. It could be all the projects you put on your resume. There's a bunch of different ways to show this stuff. But ultimately, it's those intangibles, I think, in that experience that the hiring managers want most. In my experience as well. I mean, I've worked with a lot of consulting firms over the years, for instance, and they tend to want to hire from direct competitors. They want that exact experience. That's what they really want. If somebody has a certification, great, but it's not necessarily the most important thing. It's more about what have they done and what can they do. Another way to think about it would be like, what problems can they solve? That's another thing I think for folks at the junior level to think about is, what problems could you be solving for the hiring manager versus what problems would you be creating for the hiring manager? So I think a lot of the resistance to hiring somebody junior is, it's just going to take so much time. I'm going to have to hold their hands through every little thing. But if you can show like, look, no, I research on my own. I'll figure things out. You don't need to, babysit me every hour of the day. That'll go a long way for sure. So yeah, great points. Any other tips you might have for hiring managers looking to hire maybe, for instance, somebody more experienced? Do you see that as any different than hiring somebody at the junior level?
I think when it comes to hiring somebody more experienced, it's definitely going to be kind of, give them some respect, right? They've proven themselves. I've seen a lot of job positions for experienced people where the salary doesn't kind of line up with what they're asking for. So I think it's just, giving them the respect and then making sure that the hiring process is tailored for somebody with experience, right? You shouldn't be asking somebody with experience, what's the CIA triad? They've been there, done that. So it's kind of, respecting their status and then giving them challenges. Hey, how would you solve, a ransomware attack? How would you do this or that? So I think for them, it would be that, kind of just giving them the respect that they earn through their time in the field, making sure that the salary expectations or the salary kind of meets what they should be getting paid, even though I know that might be kind of controversial. But I would just say that, when I become a senior person and potentially look for another job, that's what I would want to see, right? Don't, kind of make me excited about the hiring process, which is something this company that I just got hired for, they did. The whole process was very different and just, it was great. The third interview was a presentation on their core values, which was super unique and kind of leaned into my sales experience. So I would say just making sure, respect their status and, make sure that they're getting what they're worth. Don't overpay them, right? I guess everyone wants to be overpaid, but just kind of just giving them that respect and then just being unique in your interview and your process. Don't ask what the CIA triad is to somebody with CISSP. They've been there, done that. Ask them, hey, how would you course correct an organization that's not following compliance, or how would you get somebody to be PCI DSS compliant? Things like that. Make them excited about a challenge.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, a lot of scenario-based questions, I think, are very valuable because you get a snapshot of somebody's thought process, that investigative mindset. So yeah, totally agree. And it's a great point about respect. That's a big thing that I try to employ when I'm recruiting people, and I encourage my clients to employ as well. I think often in a market like we're in right now, where there's a lot of applicants, there's a lot of people on the market looking for jobs. Some companies or hiring managers have the sense that, okay, we can be as picky as we want. We can put people through as many interview rounds as we want. We can make them jump through all these hoops as we want, have them do a bunch of extra exercises or free work or whatever you want to call it. But that I think does, depending on how bad it is, it might show a lack of respect. And the senior people that have a lot of options, they're going to go with the path of least resistance in a lot of cases. I think in general, that's just kind of how people are wired. So you want to make the process easy, you want to make it transparent, and you want people to feel like the company actually wants to hire them, not just the other way around. Interviewing is absolutely a two-way street. So totally agree. What about the talent gap? Obviously, that's the name of the show. Do you think there is a talent gap in security right now with the state of the market, or yes or no, or why?
I think the talent gap is a self-engineered problem. I think it's a problem that the industry itself has created. I think, again, this industry has a lot of kind of gatekeeping. So I would say a lot of these jobs that are posted that seem like senior jobs, they're really not, right? They can be done by an entry-level candidate. Another thing that I'm seeing out there when it comes to the talent gap is you have a wave of determined people that want to get in there and prove that they can do this job and probably bring a whole bunch of fresh new ideas. I like to compare it kind of to like early 2000s wrestling, right? Everyone's looking for the next Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock, right? But nobody's paying attention to the young John Cena's or the young Randy Ortons that can carry the company forward. So I don't think there's a talent gap. Honestly, don't. Looking at the number of applicants that are applying and the enthusiasm I see on LinkedIn or the despair sometimes, I think the talent gap is just a self-engineered problem. I think companies need to really sit down and evaluate, is this really a senior level position, right? Or can an entry level person do this? And at the same time, I think it's disrespectful to put something as a senior level position. The senior level person gets in that position and they're just a level 1 SOC analyst, but it has another title. So I think I don't think the talent gap exists. I think we just have a jobs problem, right? Yeah, there's not enough jobs, but at the same time, there's a lot of jobs that are mislabeled and are not really being represented the way they should. I think there's more entry level jobs than we know of. I think they just have to be kind of audited and looked at and say, okay, you know what? I think an entry level person can do this. And the reality is that there is a lot of people, coming fresh out of college. This would be their first job. Those people are going to have a hard time getting in because I believe that you should have some form of real world experience to kind of get in. But somebody that's coming from IT or, help desk or systems administration, they're not entry level anymore themselves. They might be entry level to the cybersecurity world, but the reality is they have experience. They know how to solve problems and research and stuff. So I think the talent gap's not real. I think there's a lot of us out here. We're hungry, determined. We want to prove ourselves. We just can't find the jobs to do it, and the jobs are there. They just have to be reclassified.
Yeah, I love that. Just a matter of reclassification and breaking down each job, like we said, into these tiny little pieces, these tasks that we figure out what level of person could accomplish these tasks. And then, you break that down granularly enough, I think you do start to uncover some more creative ways of hiring. I think what often happens is people just don't think that deeply about these hiring processes and these job descriptions. It's often, I'm just going to throw together a list of a few bullet points, throw it to HR, they'll fill in the rest, and then post it up on LinkedIn or Indeed and just, screen maybe a few of the 1,000 applicants that come through. So I think we could definitely be more intentional as an industry about how we create job descriptions, about how we hire people, and the process of recruiting. And I often talk about that. I think a lot of the talent gap would go away overnight if recruiters spent more time going out to the market, on the front end, researching more than they are currently, speaking to the hiring manager, getting a true sense of what that hiring manager is looking for, and then going out to the market and finding people that are a fit for that job versus posting a job and then only getting back to a small handful of applicants when they have, 1,000 plus. So I think that's a great place to end. So Pablo, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do so?
Right now, mostly LinkedIn. I post my work there. So that's going to be P Rodriguez 23. You can find me there. I'll probably end up starting a YouTube and just kind of documenting my journey from, junior to senior. Yeah, so you can find me there. I'm always open to new connections. I'm open to giving some more advice and just hearing your stories. I know the market right now is a frustrating one, so I'm there to lend an ear, give advice any way I can. You can follow me there.
Awesome. Well, I guess I forgot to ask you, what's one last question for you. Is there anything that we're not talking about in the industry, but we should be, especially as it relates to hiring?
I want to say for candidates trying to get in, it's salary. Everything advertised out there is you're going to land $100K salary right out of college and this and that. No, you're not. Be realistic in your approach. Landing a 60, 70K salary as your first job is amazing, right? Landing a job in general is amazing because once you're in, it opens all the doors kind of. So I think, for candidates out there is just be willing to understand that, the salaries that were advertised in college and boot camps, that's not really the case. In a small percentage, it happens, but it's not the norm. And I just think one thing that I think nobody's speaking about is just, again, communication. I think it's a fundamental skill that everyone should possess. And I think as the world has gotten more technological, we've lost our way of communicating with each other. And I think to the candidates that are trying to break into any field, being tech, marketing, whatever, I think if you really hone in on your communication skills and know how to talk to people and how to get emotions out of people, you're going to go a long way.
Absolutely. Those are amazing points and a great place to end. We'll appreciate your time, Pablo. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Talent Gap Fireside Chat. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. Hit that notification bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. New episodes air every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern.